0400 hours. Industrial sector, northern outskirts of Kharkiv. A thick freezing fog clings to the frozen earth, obscuring the horizon. The skeletal remains of an abandoned factory stand silent against the pitch-black sky. Snow drifts pile high against rusted chain-link fences, untouched and pristine. The city itself sleeps under a strict blackout order, invisible in the gloom. The only sound is the hollow whistle of the winter wind cutting through broken concrete pillars. It is a cold, dead quiet that presses against the ears. Suddenly, the puddles of slush on the ground begin to ripple. A low, thrumming vibration penetrates the air, shaking the dust from the ruined walls. The sound grows from a murmur to a deafening drone. High above the cloud deck, heavy engines grind against the atmosphere. It is not the wind. 7 massive shapes tear through the cloud layer. The strategic bombers descend, their immense wingspans blotting out the faint starlight. Their engines roar with a guttural mechanical scream that shakes the frost off the trees below. They fly in a tight, disciplined V formation, moving with slow, terrifying weight. The lead aircraft dips its nose, leveling out for the final approach run. Hydraulic pumps whine as the bomb bay doors on the lead plane begin to cycle open, revealing the dark void inside. On the ground below, the stillness shatters. Camouflage nets are ripped aside with violent force. Israeli mobile defense trucks slam into gear, their heavy tires churning up the mud and snow. These are not standard units. They are specialized rapid response missile carriers. Hydraulic stabilizers drive into the frozen soil, anchoring the vehicles in place. Radar dishes on the command trucks spin rapidly, the machinery humming as it bites into the electronic signal of the aircraft above. Inside the lead command vehicle, the fire control officer slams his hand onto the console. The radar screen floods with red proximity warnings. He grabs the radio handset, his voice cutting through the static. He barks the coordinates. He demands immediate engagement. The order is clear. Batteries open, free fire, take them all. The rear decks of the launch vehicles tilt upward. Metal hatches slide back, exposing the cold steel of the cruise missile canisters. The systems arm with a series of metallic clanks. The target lock tone screeches in the headsets of the gunnery crews. The bombers above drone on, unaware of the trap that has just snapped shut beneath them. The gap closes. The air pressure around the launchers drops. The fuse is lit. 0408 hours. Launch site Alpha, Kharkiv perimeter. The pre-dawn gloom remains thick and suffocating. The air surrounding the mobile launchers vibrates with static electricity. Steam rises from the venting ports of the missile canisters, mingling with the freezing fog. The metal hulls of the launch vehicles groan under the shifting hydraulic pressure. A single drop of condensation falls from a steel rail and hits the mud. It never makes a sound, the world explodes. Solid rocket boosters ignite with a blinding white flash that turns night into day. A vertical column of fire erupts from the launch cells, incinerating the surrounding snow in a fraction of a second. The ground buckles. Shockwaves hammer the earth, flattening the tall grass and stripping the bark from nearby pine trees. 7 cruise missiles scream into the sky, riding pillars of flame. The roar is physical. It punches the chest and rattles the teeth. The heavy trucks rock violently on their suspension as the recoil drives them into the dirt. The missiles climb. They ascend straight up, piercing the low cloud layer like fiery needles. At 2,000 feet, the guidance computers kick in. The cylindrical bodies tilt. Small control fins snap open with a sharp metallic clack. The spent booster stages detach, tumbling back to Earth as dead weight. The main turbojet engines ignite with a high-pitched, piercing whine. The missiles level out. They transition from a vertical climb to a horizontal sprint, dropping altitude rapidly to hug the terrain. Inside the command vehicle, the tactical display glows with 7 green vectors. The radar operator grips the desk as the vehicle stops shaking. He shouts over the fading roar of the launch. He confirms good separation. He confirms trajectory lock. The commander leans over the screen, watching the green lines converge on the slow-moving targets above. He gives the order to maintain active radar guidance. He slams his fist on the metal table. The missiles accelerate to supersonic speeds. They tear across the sky, leaving vapor trails that dissipate in the wind. They drop lower, skimming just 50 feet above the frozen treetops. The sound of their passage is a cracking whip, a sonic boom that drags behind them. They rush over abandoned villages and empty roads, relentless and unthinking machines of destruction. The onboard sensors scan the horizon. They hunt for the heat signatures of the bomber engines. The distance closes rapidly. The hunter is loose. 0412 hours. Airspace above Kharkiv industrial zone. The lead Ukrainian bomber pushes through the heavy cloud banks at 5,000 feet. Ice crystals form jagged patterns on the cockpit glass. The massive propellers churn the freezing air, creating a rhythmic, thumping bass line that vibrates through the fuselage. The aircraft feels heavy, laden with payload. Below, the city is a grid of shadows and silence. Inside the cockpit, the instruments glow a dull amber. The pilot holds the yoke steady. The air feels calm. A warning light flashes red on the dashboard. A sharp digital chirp screams inside the headset. The pilot jerks his head to the right. He pulls the yoke hard. He yells a warning. It is too late. The first cruise missile punches through the cloud floor. It strikes the starboard wing of the lead bomber. The warhead detonates. The explosion shears the wing cleanly off the fuselage. High-octane aviation fuel ignites instantly, creating a blinding sphere of orange fire. The bomber lurches violently to the right. It loses all lift. The metal skin peels back like paper. The fuselage rolls over, groaning as the aluminum frame twists under the torque. The aircraft becomes a dead weight. It begins to tumble. Seconds later, the second missile finds the trailing aircraft. It slams directly into the bomb bay doors. The impact force breaks the plane's back in midair. The structural keel snaps. The tail section separates from the cockpit, spinning away into the darkness. A shockwave ripples through the formation, tossing the nearby planes like toys. Debris sprays outward in a lethal cone. A burning engine tears loose from a wing mount and plummets like a stone. The lead fuselage enters a flat spin. It falls. The screaming roar of engines dies, replaced by the howling wind of a death dive. Flaming wreckage lights up the underbelly of the clouds. Two giants are down. The formation is broken. 0415 hours. Abandoned rail yard, Sector 4. The ground vibrates violently. Shadows stretch long and erratic across the snow-covered concrete as the light from above intensifies. A stray dog bolts across the frozen tracks, ears flattened against its skull. The air pressure spikes rapidly. The roar from the sky becomes a physical weight, pressing down on the rooftops. The first fuselage slams into a sprawling brick warehouse. The impact obliterates the structure in a single heartbeat. The roof disintegrates. A mushroom cloud of fire and black smoke erupts, towering 300 feet into the cold air. The shockwave ripples outward, visible in the fog, shattering windows and buildings a mile away. Bricks, twisted steel beams, and burning aviation fuel spray across the rail yard like shrapnel. The ground heaves, cracking the asphalt roads. Seconds later, the severed tail section of the second bomber crashes into a cluster of rusted fuel silos. The metal groans and buckles under the sheer kinetic force. The remaining fumes inside the tanks ignite. A secondary explosion rips the silos apart, sending jagged sheets of steel spinning through the air. Thick, oily smoke chokes the street. Flaming debris rains down, sizzling as it hits the snow. A perimeter patrol team near the gate dives for cover behind a concrete barrier. The sergeant slams his shoulder into the mud. He grabs his radio handset. He screams over the deafening roar of the fire. He calls for immediate hazmat containment. He orders the squad to keep their heads down. The fire rages, turning the night sky a bruised purple. The roar of the flames drowns out the wind. The center of the rail yard is no longer a storage depot. It is a cratered inferno. 0418 hours, high-altitude airspace. The cohesive V formation is gone. The sky is a chaotic scramble of maneuvering aircraft. The remaining 5 bombers brake hard, scattering in cardinal directions. Engines scream at maximum RPM, pushing the heavy airframes to their structural limits. The fuselages shudder violently as the pilots yank the control yokes. They bank steeply, trying to dive into the cloud cover for safety. The air around them is thick with the smoke of their fallen wingmen. Inside the rear turret of the closest bomber, the tail gunner grips the spade handles of his twin-barrel cannon. He swings the turret wildly. He stomps on the firing pedal. The guns roar. Streams of red tracer rounds lash out into the darkness, cutting bright arcs through the night. The brass casings spill onto the metal floor, clinking rapidly. He fires blind, spraying the air behind the aircraft in a desperate wall of lead. The missiles do not flinch. 3 cruise missiles emerge from the smoke of the previous explosions. Their optical sensors lock onto the heat plumes of the straining bomber engines. They ignore the tracers. They adjust their course with terrifying precision. Small control fins twitch, correcting the flight path instantly. They bank in unison, mirroring the desperate turns of the heavy aircraft. The distance collapses. The bombers are sluggish, fighting gravity and momentum. The missiles are nimble, powered by raw thrust. One missile dives, sliding under the defensive fire of the tail gunner. It pulls up sharply, aiming for the soft underbelly of the fuselage. The gunner screams into his mask. He tracks the exhaust flame. He fires a long burst. The bullets miss by inches. The missile closes the gap. The hunter commits to the kill. 0420 hours, mid-air intercept vector. The tracer fire cuts out abruptly. The missile rising from below strikes the third bomber directly between the main landing gear doors. The warhead detonates inside the fuselage. The blast force expands outward, blowing the roof of the aircraft open. The structural keel fails instantly. The fuselage buckles. The nose drops violently, snapping the airframe in two. The severed front section plummets, trailing hydraulic fluid and sparks. The rear section flutters, engulfed in flames. To the east, the fourth bomber banks hard left. The pilot fights the heavy controls. The pursuing missile anticipates the turn. It slams into the wing root. The explosion shears the wing completely off. The heavy aircraft rolls inverted instantly. Centrifugal force pins the crew against the cockpit walls. The plane spins uncontrollably, descending into the dark clouds below. The fifth bomber attempts a steep climb. The pilot pushes the throttles to the stops. Black smoke pours from the exhaust ports. The final missile of this wave closes the distance. It strikes the vertical stabilizer. The tail section disintegrates in a shower of aluminum and composite shards. The aircraft loses all yaw control. It yaws violently to the right, stalls, and drops like a stone. Gravity claims the wreckage. 3 burning pyres fall through the fog. The roar of their engines is replaced by the whistle of the wind rushing over broken metal. The formation is decimated. 0425 hours, flight level 200, upper atmosphere. The air here is thin and violently cold. The last 2 bombers struggle against the stall speed, their noses pitched up at a desperate 40-degree angle. Engines howl at maximum output, dumping heat into the freezing slipstream. The pilots fight to drag their heavy payloads out of the kill zone. The altimeters spin wildly. Frost coats the canopy glass instantly. They are alone in the black void. The final 2 missiles climb from the cloud deck below. They do not chase the heat exhaust this time. The guidance systems calculate the lead angle. They predict the flight path. They ascend on a collision course, rising like arrows. The missiles do not strike the fuselages. The proximity fuses trip 20 meters away from the targets. The warheads detonate simultaneously. 2 expanding rings of tungsten shrapnel spray outward at hypersonic velocity. The metal cloud acts like a buzzsaw. The port wing of the 6th bomber turns into a sieve. The structural spars disintegrate under the hail of metal. The fuel tanks inside the wing rupture. Jet fuel sprays into the intake of the number 2 engine. The engine compresses the fluid and explodes, blowing the entire engine mount off the wing. The aircraft flips onto its back, spiraling down into the cloud layer. The 7th bomber takes the blast directly in the cockpit section. The windshield shatters inward. The pressure hull decompresses with a violent thump. The avionics bay shreds. The aircraft loses all electrical power. It noses over, plunging into a terminal dive. It falls silent and dark, a massive tomb dropping toward the earth. Debris rains down over a 5-mile radius. The sky is finally empty. 0430 hours, impact zone Delta, northern fields. The sky rains fire. Small pieces of aluminum and insulation drift down like strange burning snow. The heavy silence of the open plains is shattered by the terminal velocity of the final wreckage. The ground trembles rhythmically as heavy debris makes contact. The fuselage of the 6th bomber, a twisted skeleton of burning metal, slams into the center of a frozen wheat field. The kinetic energy is immense. The impact gouges a trench 50 yards long through the permafrost. Soil, ice, and jagged metal spray into the air in a dirty geyser. The remaining aviation fuel in the ruptured tanks detonates on contact. A rolling wall of orange flame engulfs the crater, melting the snow instantly and scorching the earth black. A mile to the west, the 7th bomber strikes a dense pine forest. It does not slide, it disintegrates. The main fuselage hits the tree canopy at 300 miles per hour. Ancient pines snap like dry matchsticks. The crash shears a path through the woods, leveling everything in a 100-foot radius. An engine block tears loose, tumbling through the underbrush, crushing saplings and rocks before coming to rest against a granite boulder, hissing and steaming in the cold air. Inside the Israeli mobile command vehicle, the atmosphere changes. The frantic ping of the target tracking radar stops. The screen shows only the sweeping green line of the search beam. The sky is empty. The red hostile vectors are gone. The radar operator leans back in his chair. He checks the transponder returns one last time. He verifies the splash coordinates. He turns to the battery commander. Radar clear, 7 confirmed kills. No secondary targets detected. The commander nods once. He does not smile. He grabs the tactical radio handset. His voice is flat and professional. "Control, this is Iron Hammer. Engagement complete. 7 bandits down. We are displacing now. Out." Outside, the heavy diesel engines of the launch trucks roar to life. The hydraulic stabilizers retract from the mud with a wet sucking sound. The missile canisters lower and lock into travel position. The unit is moving. In modern warfare, static artillery is dead artillery. They release the brakes. The convoy rolls out, disappearing into the fog before the first sirens wail in the distance. 0435 hours. Crash site Bravo, Eastern Residential District. The air tastes of copper and burnt kerosene. Thick black smoke rolls down the empty streets, swallowing the streetlights. Burning debris litters the roadway, glowing red in the dark. A shattered landing gear strut sits embedded in the brickwork of a corner shop. The silence is gone, replaced by the wail of approaching sirens. First responder units drift around the icy corner. Heavy fire trucks slam on their brakes, skidding on the slush. Doors fly open. Firefighters in heavy turnout gear hit the ground running. They shout commands over the roar of the blaze. Hoses are dragged off the reels, the brass couplings clanking against the asphalt. The main fuselage of the second bomber burns with intense heat. The magnesium alloy of the airframe sparks white-hot, reacting violently with the oxygen. A stream of water blasts from the lead deck gun. It hits the wreckage. Steam explodes outward, instantly scalding the air. The fire hisses like the living thing, fighting the suppression. A secondary fuel pocket ruptures. A fireball rolls across the street. The firefighters duck behind the engine block of their truck. The heat blisters the paint on the nearby cars. Windows pop out of their frames from the pressure change. The crew leader signals for foam suppressant. They advance slowly, boots crunching on broken glass and aircraft aluminum. They fight to contain the inferno before it spreads to the housing block. The battle on the ground has just begun. 0450 hours, perimeter control, crash site Alpha. The immediate fires are suppressed, reduced to smoldering mounds of blackened metal. The fog is lifting, revealing the scar across the landscape. Military transports rumble up the access road. These are not rescue units, they are recovery teams. Soldiers in hazmat gear disembark. They move with precise, practiced efficiency. Concertina wire is unspooled rapidly, establishing a hard perimeter. Temporary floodlights snap on, bathing the wreckage in harsh, clinical white light. An intelligence officer steps over a twisted wing spar. He holds a tablet. He scans the tail section, looking for the serial number. He finds it scorched but legible on the vertical stabilizer. He snaps a high-resolution photo. He logs the data. 2 technicians pry open the avionics bay with crowbars. Metal screeches. They reach into the dark, charred interior. They pull out the flight data recorder. It is battered, the orange paint chipped but intact. The officer nods. He taps his headset. "Command, site secure. Intelligence assets recovered. We are sterilizing the area." The sun begins to crest over the horizon, casting long shadows over the graveyard of the 7 bombers. The raid is over. The evidence is secured.